Okay, I think we're live. If you're listening, good afternoon. How are you? It's good to have you on. I'm having a lot of fun right now watching the market have fun with us and all the reactions to not getting a stimulus package and the nonstop political commentary. We'll talk a little bit about the national race today. We'll go over polling, a little bit about local in a second. For some reason, I can't get Facebook to come up, so good afternoon. I'm Steve Mazzacane. Welcome to the Steve Mazzacane podcast. I didn't really set any significant criteria or discussions today, but we'll talk about the national race. We'll talk about our new Supreme Court justice and some of the most recent polls as we go forward. Not much locally. I stopped at town hall today to just get us feel what's going on. Nothing earth-shattering. So everything is really about the national race and our Supreme Court nominee. And so, as you may know, late last night, Miss Barrett is our new Supreme Court justice. I have read her resume. I've read about 4 or 5 of her decisions. So from a personal standpoint, I would say there's very little that I will agree with her on from an ideology standpoint. However, I lean liberal. I think most people in Connecticut lean liberal when it comes to social issues. She is certainly more conservative than the average Connecticut and certainly the average Branford resident. And she locks up a 6-3 majority in the Senate, on the Supreme Court for a very long time. Some of her more interesting decisions had to do with business and their interaction with unions. And all of those, as much as I typically will side on this of labor, her decisions, in my view, I agreed with. Many of them were, so much of a judge's decision isn't necessarily an interpretation of law, but it's more of a decision of, is this the purview here? We're filing X. Can we make this decision based on this law? And secondly, should the legislature be making this decision? It's the job of the courts to interpret the law where there's a question of law, but the legislature also has an obligation. Their job is to pass laws. And so a significant part of cases that come through are, okay, you're filing this lawsuit against this business because of X, but it doesn't apply because of you were actually doing X, Y, and Z. And that can be a political maneuver where they're saying, listen, I don't want to change the law or hurt business here, so I'm going to rely on this little, small detail of the law. But at the end of the day, it's up to the legislature to make those changes. And so I posted earlier on some of what I would say the hypocrisy of the left when it comes to this decision. First of all, if you are someone who is pushing for more women involved, to be involved in government and be involved in the court system, to get more appointments, to be more visible in business, and I am, and pretty much everyone with a brain is, there should be a more 50-50 even split of representation, male and female. No question. I don't think anybody would argue with that. I want qualified people, but some of the most brilliant people I've ever known were females. So it has nothing to do with sex. That being said, I think it's fair to say she falls in that category of extremely intelligent. No question about it. Doesn't add to the females on the court because she replaces Ginsburg, obviously, but I was incredibly impressed with the way she writes and the way she makes decisions and the thought process behind it. So I was kind of hoping, you can't do it. It's an election season. It's that time. But, for the Democratic base that is clamoring, women, 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 we're the party of women, you don't have to agree with her decisions. But you can't just be the party of women that agree with you. You can't claim to be we're the party of pushing equality only if they agree with what we want the Democratic base to agree with. That's not logical. It's not reasonable. There's nothing helpful about that. If you only want women that agree with you, in fact, if you only want people in office that agree with you, then say it. You're a political party. Let's not pretend you care about social issues. If you care about getting people in there who are going to pass your and push your agenda, that agenda changes year to year as well. So I'd rather have somebody who has some sort of personal ideology and stands by that and is logical and intelligent in explaining that and putting their decisions out there. So I'm happy she was selected. There were certainly some things that are going to be issues. Will Roe v. Wade be an issue? Will there be I cannot see a direct attack on Roe v. Wade. I don't see a law coming up that says, let's undo Roe v. Wade. But what has typically happened is states will bring forth issues that will allow them, that old national versus states' rights versus federal government rights, where they can say a state has a right to limit access to certain things. So it won't come out and say, no, Roe v. Wade isn't the law anymore. No, you can't get an abortion. But they'll say, we're going to find ways through the law to make it significantly harder to get one. So an example, somebody from an inner city in Alabama where the average income is next to nothing wants an abortion for whatever reason. It would be nearly impossible to get it. To get it, you have to go 2 or 3 states over. That travel cost is not something they can bear. And that's where the courts can play a significant role. There's not going to be a case that says we don't want Roe v. Wade. That would be a nightmare. And the courts very likely would walk away from that case and not go to it. But there will be cases that can limit the role of the federal government and increase the role of the states' governments. And that is where this 6-3 majority can play a significant role. In Connecticut, that will never be an issue, right? In very liberal states, that will never be an issue. But in some of these southern states, it will be. And we've heard some nightmare stories. I mean, it gets ugly when somebody is in a position that they want or need an abortion and they can't get one. There are times that awful things happen. And just truly horrific medical disasters happen when people are not in the hands of a medical professional. And so it's a scary thing, but this is our country. This is how our system works. And while we can complain about the Supreme Court, now it's a 6-3 majority, and there's this questions of, do you stack the court the other way? And I certainly think Kamala Harris seems like she wants to. Biden's not really giving an answer on that. But for all the people yelling about the Supreme Court decisions, they're missing one significant factor. And it's very simple here. The job of the legislature is to pass laws. If you're relying on the courts to determine what the laws are, then the legislature is not doing their job. And we know this well in Connecticut because we just passed a police accountability whatever law, incredibly controversial. And literally as it was being passed, Democrats were talking about, well, we have to go back and make changes to this. There's an understanding that the job of the legislature is to pass the laws. When it goes to the Supreme Court and they make a decision saying this aspect of a law is unconstitutional, the legislature then has the ability to go back and adjust that law. In fact, they have the ability to go back and adjust the Constitution. That's the ability of a legislature. The fact that our legislature is incompetent right now doesn't mean we then say, oh, wait a minute, our legislature is incompetent, so let's rely on another aspect of government to do their job. That doesn't make any sense. So for a Supreme Court, I may not agree with the ideology of a certain judge. I can see the concerns people have with a 6-3 majority. But it doesn't mean that the legislature can't go back and do their job. So this nonsense about, oh, they're pushing through. By the way, about the pushing through and the timelines, the long length of time, just 2 to 3 to 4 months that it takes to get in a Supreme Court judge, is something relatively new to the last 30, 40 years. If you go back in history, most of the Supreme Court judges were done within a month. So no one's pushing this through or rushing this through. And I will say it's absolutely absurd to believe for a second that the Democrats would not do the exact same thing if they were in the situation of the Republicans. You have a president who's likely behind. You have a chance of losing the Senate. And you had a month and a half to get somebody new through. Democrats would have done the same thing. So Roberts has been a switch. There's no question. You have Obamacare pretty much because of Roberts. So It's 6-3. I think the thought process being 6-3 is, had it been 5-4 before, there was a chance that Roberts would go the other way. That's true. So Steve Sullivan in the comments just mentioned that. That's true. There's no question about it. But what we really have to avoid, and I'm seeing it in every post from every liberal friend I have, is we push through this nomination. Now, there's nothing exceptional about pushing through this nomination. The party in charge did it. The president has a right to nominate somebody. The Senate has a right to take that up. They didn't break any laws. And as much as it's hypocrisy from 4 years ago when Obama put a name up, they didn't break any laws then either. This is the law. This is how it is. And at the end of the day, we have a legislature that's incompetent, that can't pass laws, that can't get on the same page. Nobody can get a big enough majority to get their agendas through. And so now, what may happen after this election? Well, let's go and look at Real Clear Politics, and because I think these numbers are getting very, very interesting. So on Real Clear Politics, when I go to it, the first thing I like to look at, let's take a look and I'll read these off, are the initial numbers of nationally, and they are Biden 7 plus 4, of 7.4. It's tightening up. Real Clear takes, you can also go to 538, but Real Clear I like the most. They're more concise, I think. So the national numbers are tightening up. Top battlegrounds, Biden 3.6. So if we click on Biden 3.6, you can do this with me if you're paying attention or if you're online, and you look at this chart, remember something. Just a few days ago, the lead was 4.1. The lead was 5 on October 13th. And now momentum is bringing Trump higher. Momentum is at 45.6. Trump has not been this high in months. In fact, I don't think he's been this high this year. He was at 45.4 on September 1st. He dropped down to as low as 44.5. So the new polls, 45.6. Biden is down to 49.2. So he's not over that 50% threshold. So this is starting to tighten. Now, I don't know the legitimacy of this poll, but Real Clear Politics puts it out here that it's Trafalgar Group is a polling company, apparently, that has Pennsylvania, Trump and Biden tied. Susquehanna is another one. This is listed on Real Clear. Florida, Trump has a 4-point lead in Florida. Now, we take all of these polls with a grain of salt, but there's a little bit of momentum going this way. Not as fast as we saw the momentum after the Comey report 4 years ago, but there's a little bit of momentum going in the Trump direction, and that's significant. Now, there's still going to be a wide range of polls that come in, and they were. Let's put this in perspective. Last year, the polls were off in Pennsylvania 4.4 points. So the final version had Hillary up a certain amount. Trump won by 0.7 in the final polling. Right now, it's tighter than that. Now, I've seen polls go the other way as well. So this is taking an aggregate poll. The question is, how much of the poll's off? We just don't know. And so, you know, does Trump have momentum in some states? Sure. I don't know the answer. This is the most incredible race, because all of the numbers are showing Biden is taking it a significant lead nationally. I think the market is starting to price that in. I think the Republicans in the Senate have kind of come to that. So, you know, there's that momentum. But then there's what happened 4 years ago, and there's a massive cloud of what happened 4 years ago over every single politician, every single political analyst, every single podcaster of, yeah, but can we trust all the information we're taking in? And I don't think that's an indictment of the polls. I think it's an indictment, it's more of the impact of Trump. I think Trump supporters, those supporting him, are different than any other race we've seen. There is a fear by many to even say they're a Trump supporter. I think there are Trump people who are deliberately saying Biden in the polls. That's just my theory. And to read some of these comments, too many people rely on false narratives based on opinion rather than facts. Okay, but that's what we do. You know, the polling is statistically what it is, but we all base on our own analysis of that. Trump has a lot of momentum. His use of the videos of Biden at his rallies are devastating. So here's the deal with the rallies. The rallies may be packed, but it's still a very, very small percentage of voters. The visual is far more momentum on Trump's side. There's no question. But let's put it this way. Connecticut's going to vote Biden. There's no vehicle, trains, driving through the state with Biden flags. There's no, we see every weekend now there's a couple hundred cars and trucks and what have you with Biden flags driving in a parade. So that doesn't mean Trump's going to win Connecticut. He's not going to win Connecticut. So here's the question. Does Trump get more votes this year than he got 4 years ago? My assumption is no. Does Hillary get more? Does Biden get more votes than Hillary did? My assumption is yes. So that makes winning those swing states harder. You also don't have Gary Johnson. There were 2 independent people on the ballot 4 years ago. You're not going to have those people on this ballot this year. So those people are a question too. Where do they go? Some of those may revert back to Trump. I think more go to Trump than to Biden. But all that really matters is 3 or 4 states. Pennsylvania is everything. Florida is everything. You win Pennsylvania and Florida, you pretty much have a great shot. And so seeing the numbers tighten in Pennsylvania means this is going to be an unbelievable photo finish. So one of 2 things happens. All the numbers are right, and Biden crushes them. Just 350 electoral votes, crushes them, destroys them, not even a question, which from a political standpoint may not be the worst thing in the world. If Trump's going to lose and it's close, the country can be dragged out for another 2 or 3 months. It could get really ugly. You kind of hope that if he, if there's a winner, I'd rather see somebody win in a blowout. Do I think someone just posted Trump is going to win in a landslide? I don't think Trump is going to win in a landslide. I don't see that happening. Denise, because Biden supporters are doing the things that actually reach voters: text banking, phone banking, socially distanced canvassing. Flag waving does nothing but make the flag waver feel better. Well, okay. But I will tell you that the Trump ground game in the swing states has been active and more active than the Democratic ground game earlier. Early on, the Democrats were not going door to door because of COVID. They were taking a more conservative approach, oddly with that word. Republicans were knocking on 1 million doors early. Republican registration, new registration advantage in those states is huge. It's almost 2 to 1. So don't knock the Trump ground game. The Dems have a ground game too. I think it's much better. I think it's far more energized in the key states than it ever was for Hillary. I think people were indifferent about Hillary. And I also think there were Democrats that didn't think Trump could win. I think the Democrats are more energized. But that Trump base is pretty solid. And I think there are some people who won't say they're voting for Trump that will vote for Trump. And Biden's quote on fracking and on oil in that debate impacts 3 or 4 key states, and they're the wrong key states. So I'm not putting, even the betting odds are 2 to 1. It's not 80-20. New York Times, I think, had Hillary at 95% to win. No one's even going there this time. No one's even thinking that because what Trump was able to pull off 4 years ago. But it really comes down to, do you trust the polls? I don't know. That's why this is the fun part of the week before the election. I wrote, I think about 6-7 weeks prior to the election 4 years ago, Biden was going to win based on one particular number, the dislike factor of Hillary. We don't have that with Biden. That's not an issue with Biden. He's not hated. Biden's actually has a very good track record of being bipartisan. And you can go after him about his quotes on fracking. But the truth of the matter is, Obama was the fracking president. Okay, I meant fracking. I wasn't replacing a word there. Obama was the fracking president. If you remember correctly, when Obama was running for office after Bush, a large part of the discussion was on our dependence on foreign oil. And the left wanted fracking gone. Like every environmental person you talk to, no fracking, no fracking. They thought Obama would go there and do it. Obama did the opposite. With Biden as his vice president, Obama did the opposite. And the result is, when is the last time politically we have a conversation about our dependence on foreign oil? Years. Say whatever you want about Obama, and I am a massive Obama fan. This is part of the reason he stood up to his own party. And he realized our national security mattered. Environmental things mattered too, but our national security mattered. He did not fight to end fracking. And many, many far left Democrats would have. Bernie Sanders would have. And remember something. Biden was his vice president. So the Obama-Biden ticket for 8 years very much supported fracking and did not get in the way of fracking, realizing the benefit of making America energy independent. It worked. So we have his quotes now saying we want to get off of oil, which is true. We do want to get off of oil. The way he said it and the way and the timing of it was terrible. His quotes on fracking, he lied about fracking. No question about it. He did say he wanted to end fracking. There is a million videos that show that. That's the worst possible time. If you were waiting for Biden to make a mistake, that was the mistake. Because that doesn't affect Connecticut. That affects Pennsylvania. That affects the Rust Belt. That affects Texas. That affects oil businesses, all that stuff. So that's, if this race goes to Trump, his quotes about fracking will be looked back as the determining factor, where everything turned. And I said this before that debate. That debate was everything. I thought Trump actually had the best debate he could possibly have. It's funny because all the polls afterwards, every article I read had Biden winning. I don't think Biden won that debate. I think Trump won that debate because Trump actually had a fairly low bar. I told you this before, and this is my overall theory on Trump, is that people like Trump. Forget what the polls say. You don't get into Home Alone movies. You don't have the #1 TV show that people tie into every night. You're not quoted saying you're fired a million times without people liking you. They're looking for a reason to vote for him. And so you have, if he can hold on to his votes, here's what the numbers are showing. He's losing older white voters. He's gaining black voters. He's gaining Latino voters. If you had said that to me 4 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. Those white voters, can they come back before Election Day? Or did they already vote? You can go through the process of changing your vote, but I don't know that everybody will do that. Or did they already vote? The huge advantage for Democrats may not be turnout. Everybody's saying turnout will be high. I don't know that turnout will be higher, or it'll be higher, but not significantly higher, because the same people who were voting on Election Day were voting. It was a huge push by Democrats to vote early. So you're only taking people from Election Day and making them vote early. I don't think it'll be a massive difference. I mean, I heard one person say 150 million votes. I can't see that. 130, 140, 150 would be absurd. Be great to see. Just don't see it happening. And so now the question becomes, for those of us in Branford and Guilford and Madison, does this impact further down the ticket? And I think the answer is no. There is not a single thing I'm seeing that indicates that Republicans are making inroads locally. The same people are in the parades, but Democrats are voting early. Those going door to door reporting a huge positive reaction. What Democrats have to make sure and Republicans want to do this too, is make sure that there are people on the top of the ticket are voting the entire ticket down. But I think at the end of the day, from a local standpoint, Rosa's in, Comey's in, Cohen's in, obviously Scanlon's in. I think we have the status quo in that regard, and I think that's probably for the better. You know, you're going to have a Democratic majority in Hartford anyway. It sucks when your representative is a minority because you can't get as much done. Now, granted, we have Scanlon, and Scanlon is connected, so Scanlon has probably the ability to get things done the most. But and to those worried about that police bill, yeah, if there's going to be changes to it, then you want to be in the majority, because the minority is not going to have a chance to get much in there. But we have, so there's a quote on here too. Well, Tom Coon, if he kept his mouth shut at the first debate, he would have been higher in the polls. I agree completely. Absolutely agree completely. That debate was a disaster. It was an embarrassment by almost any standard. Steve Sullivan, DeLauro is more nervous than any time in her career. You know, it certainly seems that way. I have never seen. So there was an article in the Connecticut Mirror today that her opponent put like $1.5 million, $1.3 million into this campaign. If you have it, you have it. I mean, that's nothing. We've seen Lamont drop a fortune into campaigns too. But to see DeLauro on TV on commercials talking about being attacked, they're paying for these ads. I'm seeing out of state or groups, PACs, spend money for DeLauro. I've never seen this. I've just never seen it. She always wins by a massive, massive margin. So either it's a personal thing where she's saying, you know what, you attacked me, I'm coming back at you. Or something internally is telling them that the Republicans are making some headway. That's going to be an interesting question. It's going to be a fascinating question. And this last week, where the push is to get people to vote early and that get out the vote effort those last couple days can be the difference for some of these lower ticket things. But I don't know. Any news on people going to town halls to change their votes mailed in? Connecticut is one of 7 states that can do this. I have not heard that yet, but I will check on that, Tom, tomorrow. That's an interesting question. And we'll know. And listen, tomorrow and the next day, we're going to have more of the polls post that debate. And we'll see, especially, we've got one poll that shows Trump ahead in Pennsylvania. All the rest are the other way. If I start seeing 3 or 4, John, I'm skipping your comment because you're talking about things. The laptop I'm not going to go into the Biden son thing. Okay, so I don't see confirmation of it. It's hearsay at this point, and there's nothing saying Biden's part of it. So I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories. We're here to analyze actual numbers, actual events. So that's what I mean. Comment, you could talk about this stuff, but I'm not going to go into, you keep bringing up this laptop thing. There's no way to get a hold of that. There's probably going to be no way to get a hold of that before the election. And it doesn't seem to have moved the needle anyway. I think his comments on fracking and oil are going to have a bigger impact, if there's going to be an impact, than anything about some laptop and his son. His son had a serious drug problem or something, and whatever. So until I see confirmation, and I'm sorry, I don't subscribe to the theory that everybody in the media is corrupt. So if I start seeing Politico write about it, and if I start seeing, the New York Times a little biased, sure, but more reputable news organizations write about it, then we'll start paying attention to it. You're on the record now dismissing massive corruption. Okay. All right. That's great. Fred, when Margaret spoke to Rosa in Italian and Rosa couldn't respond, it kind of lost her. I'm not sure about that. Not speaking Italian. We'll see. But there is something up with the Rosa thing. I agree. And Steve Sullivan brought that up. There's some kind of like, what the hell? Why are you spending time on this race? Why are you spending money on this? Is there some indication this is tighter? I don't know. No idea. And that's what's blowing my mind. That's why I can't even make a prediction. What I think is going to happen? Logic tells me Biden wins easily. I voted for Biden. I'm voting on day. I'm voting for Biden for a lot of reasons, but logic tells me Biden's going to win. But there's just something when I look at, there's so many oddities. What is Rosa doing? What does that final debate impact? I saw a debate where Trump won. Trump looked presidential. Biden didn't make a lot of key points that weren't already made. I think I walked out thinking Trump said 1, 2, 3. You're a part of the establishment. You've been there for all these years. Nothing happened. So, there's all these red flags that are saying, what the hell? And so when I see a poll that comes in that says it's tied in Pennsylvania, and I see the aggregate polls getting closer and closer, that's what we look for, momentum. He may not lead on election day, but did it go from 5 to 1? If it went from 5 to 1, and there's a 4 or 5 day lag in these polls, what can happen? Then the other question, did so many people vote early that the final debate didn't matter? Did so many people vote early in Pennsylvania that talking about getting rid of fracking doesn't matter? So many questions. And that's what makes this so fascinating. John Mancini, Steve only wants to talk about left-wing conspiracy theories and dismiss all corruption from candidates he supports. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. We'll go from there. Rosa looked old. Well, Rosa's not young. You know, it's just, that's the biggest red flag for me is the Rosa factor locally. She wins by a 2-1 margin every single time, 2-1. So maybe it's 60-40? Can you see this being 55-45? I mean, God, I can't see her losing, right? So, but even winning, an 8 to 10 point margin would be, holy crap, significant. And if that's the case, you're going to see, without a presidential election 2 years from now, a lot of money poured into that race against her. All right. Thanks for joining us. And listen, John, I don't know who you are, but I'm not laughing at you. I'm deciding that I'm not going to spend time talking about an alleged incident, which we don't know. We have actual numbers to go over. We have actual debates that we've had. We have actual quotes from the candidates. We have actual issues to talk about. And no one's changing their mind based on this podcast. We have, the average podcast is seen like 700 times, and it's local. I'm not laughing at you. That's not what I'm choosing to talk about on this podcast. And I thank you for joining. I thank everybody for joining in and having a conversation, but I'm not going to go down that route. Somebody also went crazy on me for not talking about QAnon or whatever the hell I'm not going to spend time on that shit. If we have some sort of FBI says this is absolutely true and this is accurate, then we're going to talk about it. And it'll be all over the place. But until that point comes, I don't have the resources to go independently confirm that story. If there's an issue with Town Hall in Brantford or Guilford or Madison or something in North Brantford, or there's a story, I can go confirm it. I have all the contacts. I can call those people. I can talk to those people. You're asking me about a laptop that a guy got at a printer shop who's blind, who handed it over to Giuliani. I don't know. I'm not going to spend time talking about that. I'm not Rush Limbaugh. I want to be the moderate Rush Limbaugh. I'd like his success, but I'm not going to do that. If we have independent confirmation of it from the FBI, the CIA, whatever, it's a different story. Guys, have a great day. I appreciate you joining me. We'll be back tomorrow, and hopefully we have some new polls tomorrow. Shania, how are you? Shania and I went to school together in Derby. It's good to see you on. No, I'm not. Listen, there's enough real information to base it on. I don't think a conspiracy theory. And listen, I don't know if it's conspiracy. Maybe it's all true. Maybe the whole laptop thing is true. I don't know. But what I'm not going to do is not have the ability to confirm. I watched the debate. I know what they said. I saw his quotes on fracking. I see the polls in front of me. I want to talk about those. I can't confirm a laptop theory. Can't do it. In any event, thank you, and I appreciate all the support. We got a lot of actually emails over the weekend and support and some donations too, and I appreciate that. We'll be back on tomorrow and have more of the conversation. And as always, I thank you for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow at 4:00. Have a great night, guys.